While the Paladin is the king of the auras, he's not the only source of this type of effect, with the Druid able to sneak in a handful of his own, though with a rather unfortunate drawback. It's on a squishy summon that can't fight back, so the question becomes, are they actually worth it in spite of that? Though first, let's get the basic housekeeping out of the way. In 2.4, they've smoothed out the resist of spirits, giving them 25% resistance to everything. Yes, physical, magic, and elemental, while retaining their natural poison immunity. And the other important thing to remember is spirits, like vines, are exclusive, meaning you can only have one active at a time, so you will only want to invest heavily into the one that you plan to use for your build and skip the rest. Now, to throw things a bit on their head, much like these skills do, we'll start with the highest level of the pack, Spirit of the Barbs, the level 30 spirit, which is essentially a Thorns competitor, though with the changes in 2.4, it starts to be differentiated from things like Iron Maiden, which is pure percent, and Thorns, which is hybrid percent and flat damage, this time being straight, flat, physical damage, no percents, no need to actually be hit, just need to be attacked in melee range. Oddly enough, this improves the spirit for use against normal enemies, but makes it significantly worse against bosses, since it can no longer reflect scaling damage to your minions like it used to. That said, with how rarely it was used for that, I don't blame them for changing it, though with the changes to the Druid's main summons, I find myself kind of wishing they had a percent component like what Thorns kept. Overall, you will almost never see people using this level 30 skill, which does not bode well for our other spirits if you're going in blind, but thankfully it is a bit backwards, as the skills get oddly better as we move up the tree rather than down. This is because as we move to the level 18 spirit, Heart of the Wolverine, we now have our actual damage boosting spirit, with +% damage and +% attack rating, and an excellent choice for both summoners and melee druids for like the Fury Wolf or the Mauler Bear, not to mention super helpful to similarly combat-oriented allies. Now, the drawback of relying on a spirit for something like this is that it's going to be in the thick of battle regularly due to its AI basically aggressively lacking any self-preservation skills. And while this is true of all the spirits, this is a pretty common spirit on tanking builds, which means less opportunities for navigating them out of the way of enemies. So for convenience's sake, I usually like dropping some points in the animal summons to provide at least distractions to keep the spirit around a little bit more. Though the spirit we tend to have less problems with is the ever-popular Oak Sage, which is interestingly the spirit without an aura parallel, with the closest analogy being battle orders, and it unfortunately follows the same behavior, albeit just for life instead of everything. This means that the percent it applies is going to be based off of hard points in vitality and flat life boosts. This is why you'll notice far less gain from plus life per level sources, as well as plus vitality on equipment sources, which is also the reason why you'll often notice that min-maxing for stuff like PvP or late game builds, people will often favor builds that go towards these setups rather than just getting points wherever they can. Now, another reason the Oak Sage actually does well, besides the fact that it's useful for both ranged and tanky builds, is that spirits are affected by their own auras. So at higher levels, you'll actually find that Oak Sage becomes the tankiest of the spirits, despite having the lowest base life of the trio. That said, they all have their uses, especially if you're running in a pack with other druids, since having multiples of the same aura, at least these types of auras, is kind of pointless due to only the highest one functioning. Though, even outside of that, the choice between Oak Sage and Heart of the Wolverine is a pretty important one depending on your build, since Oak Sage is only additive with the percents from shapeshifting, not multiplied. So, do you have a favorite spirit, or do you avoid using auras from supremely squishy sources? Or would you like to see the spirits get a little more utility so they don't just float around randomly? Mention it down below, and as always, keep gaming, have fun, and peace out. This has been Alzorath. Bye.